Pocketnow's iPhone 7 coverage is brought to you by dbrand. To buy the best fitting skin for your phone or tablet, please visit dbrand.com. It's the best iPhone ever, but let's get down to brass tacks and see what this smaller iPhone 7 can really do. First up, for you specs junkies, not a lot has changed on paper from last year's phone. You can pause the video here to get a quick rundown on the hardware we're looking at. Moving over to design, we've all started talking about Apple products like we would purses or shoes. New for this season, Apple makes a daring design move. That's right, black is the new rose gold. Honestly, this is a pretty sharp look for a phone, and the better blended antenna lines are appreciated. It's a shame Apple couldn't deliver that on the other color options. Yet we have to question whether a new color and a bit of sculpting around the camera housing really does constitute fresh design. If an iPhone is to be considered a lifestyle accessory, shouldn't Apple be working harder at being a fashion vanguard? Something to think about. I personally enjoy the satin finish on the matte black better than the glossy jet black iPhone, but this will still pick up fingerprints like crazy. What we have here, though, is maybe the last true premium small form factor phone. Only Apple this year seems interested in providing hardware options for folks with smaller hands. Checking out the screen, this is likely the best LCD we've ever seen for color and brightness, though it still loses to AMOLED displays for contrast. The Retina pixel density is fine for day-to-day activities on this screen size, but folks who really like to get their noses into their phones or are interested in trying out some virtual reality will likely be disappointed in this 750p resolution. The new home button isn't actually a button at all, and this personally might be my favorite new feature, as it addresses one of the more common failure areas of previous iPhones. The tactile feedback here is fed through the phone's vibration system, which can be customized. And while it has a funky feel at first, it won't take users long to acclimate. Manual buttons on older iPhones already feel a bit clunky. We're also very happy to see proper water resistance on this iPhone. Rated IP67, the iPhone 7 should handily survive being submerged in up to a meter of water for up to 30 minutes. The iPhone 7 suffered no issues after our pitcher of water test here. Now, moving over to software, we've produced several videos on iOS 10, but as a quick recap, this new version of iOS brings better gesture and 3D touch support. A new control center is nicely laid out, but the brightness slider can be easy to miss when on the move. The new Photos app is spruced up. Music has a cleaner look with more options for cultivating playlists. And lastly, Messages gets a huge update for personalizing conversations with playful transitions and new emoji. We'd be remiss if we didn't reiterate that some aspects of iOS haven't aged well. Apple's home screen organization options feel limited in this day and age. And even on the smaller iPhone, keeping back buttons in the upper corner can be a reach. This made sense on smaller iPhones, but the software just stayed like this to remain familiar even as screen sizes increased. It's not necessarily ideal anymore from an ergonomic standpoint. And while Apple has been improving support for 3D touch, there's still very little conveyance as to which apps you can actually use with a force press. The newest version of iOS on the newest Apple chipset is always a tasty recipe for performance, though we occasionally do see some subtle frame rate drops when flinging through the multitasking view. Apple's A10 chipset benches like a monster, and when paired with such a low-resolution screen, we also shouldn't be surprised that this phone is a gaming champ, except for the battery life, of course, which we'll talk about later in this review. Cellular performance is good, but generally around my neck of the woods, reception fell slightly behind the iPhone 6s, maybe because these new antenna bands have a little less surface area, maybe? Against the glass-back Galaxy, we see Apple fall even just a little further behind. What was impressive, though, was to see how strong Wi-Fi reception was during speed tests. Of course, Apple won't let you just see Wi-Fi reception, but moving as far from my router as I could, the iPhone could consistently pull a faster download than the Galaxy S7. Now, moving over to photography, we have the most complete examination of the iPhone camera available online in our iPhone 7 Plus Real Camera review. As a quick recap, we're happy to see a faster focusing system, a wider aperture, and optical image stabilization on the smaller iPhone, though the last 2 points mainly seem to benefit low-light shots. Daylight photos and videos are very similar to the 6S. Video is high quality, though it's frustrating that for a phone with stereo speakers, Apple still only delivers mono audio. And Apple still has one of the strongest games around for fun features like HDR and slow motion video, though this app is starting to feel old and limited against some of the truly great camera software found on competing devices. We have a whole separate video talking about the camera app too, which has proven to be somewhat controversial with our audience. But the most controversial aspect of the iPhone has to be the removal of the 3.5mm headphone jack in favor of moving to the Lightning connector or to a wireless solution. Moving the DAC off of the phone and over to the included adapter or earpods results in slightly lower quality output than last year's phone from the built-in jack. Digital output isn't particularly impressive. It's little different than moving an MP3 file over a USB cable. You wouldn't call a file transfer music. At some point, you need to actually create analog vibrations in the air which your ears can hear. And out of the box, the iPhone 7 is a step backwards. Apple was the gold standard when CD quality was top dog, but they just sort of stayed there as competitors caught up, then surpassed them. Improving the situation requires buying more expensive accessories, which have their own signal processing hardware and can only be used with the iPhone. Bluetooth is certainly more convenient than Lightning headphones or adapters, but currently Bluetooth 4 simply cannot compete against a traditional wired connection when looking at phones from HTC or LG. Well, Apple followed Motorola here, and we're sure that more manufacturers will follow them. But at least if you own an Android and invest in USB-C headphones, you could still use those headphones with your MacBook. No such luck with Apple's EarPods. And Apple lost a headphone jack but gained a speaker, moving to stereo output, which is certainly a welcome change when watching videos and playing games. Two speakers bring louder ringtones and alerts, but to our ears, actual quality lands mid-pack. At full volume, we rarely encountered bad distortion, but highs can be a bit shrill. For phone speakers, we've got a nice amount of bass, but there's a dullness to the upper mids, which can sometimes make the phone sound like it's got a stuffy nose. It's a valiant effort for Apple's first stereo phone, but even mid-rangers like the Alcatel Idol 4S easily give it a run for its money. We can always declare that Apple produces the most power-efficient handsets on the market, but they face Androids with larger batteries as brute force responses. This year, the battery grows to a 1,960 mAh cell over the iPhone 6s's 1,715 mAh capacity. But this is still well behind the number of Android phones which are breaking into 3,000 mAh territory. We can't get too excited about this capacity increase though, as the iPhone 7 also packs a quad-core CPU, 2 whole extra cores over the iPhone 6s, and this seems to bring battery life in line with last year's phone. For most of our synthetic testing, the iPhone 7 falls ever so slightly behind the 6s, though in daily use it'd be difficult to declare a clear victor. Running our media test, streaming 30 minutes of HD video over Wi-Fi at 190 lux, the iPhone 7 drained 7% of its battery, draining more than the Galaxy S7. Now, we've already produced a full comparison between the Galaxy and the iPhone, but we got several comments about this battery test. To expand on the discussion, we ran another test playing 30 minutes of Marvel Future Fight. This game is terribly optimized for Qualcomm-powered Android phones, but it runs like butter on the iPhone. The Galaxy has a larger screen with 3 times more resolution, and we know that Samsung bloat keeps a lot more software running in the background. The Galaxy battery is over 6 months old, and I also made sure to run a level where there was a lot of white background to keep that AMOLED display juiced up. This comparison basically hands every advantage we can think of to Apple, and yet after 30 minutes, the Galaxy drained 13% of its battery, and the iPhone was down 15%. The Galaxy S7 is less power efficient, but it's simply going to last longer during the day with similar use. The smaller iPhone is really at its strongest when it's not being used, and we don't mean that as a slight. Apple still maintains the best low-power mode we've ever seen, and this phone really does seem to be built around the idea of short bursts of activity, not prolonged use. And the charging situation isn't particularly impressive either. After 30 minutes on the included charger, we only topped off 26%. And it's a shame. Such a small battery paired with a faster charger would be insanely fast to recharge. But we're still working with the minimum Apple can include with a $650 phone. So let's wrap this up. Where does that leave us with the iPhone 7? Well, few companies can generate an emotional response like Apple can. The iPhone 7 is a good phone, but for every step forward we find with lifestyle features, there seems to be a step back somewhere else. Trading pieces around, in many ways, the iPhone 7 feels like a lateral move from the iPhone 6s, less like a true successor, perhaps closer to an iPhone 6 SE, if you will. If you're rocking an iPhone 6s, water resistance and stereo speakers are nice perks, but little else will separate the daily experience from what you currently own. Ignoring Android options, the iPhone 7 actually finds itself in tough competition from the revised 6S with more storage for $100 less. And folks who like the iPhone 5 form factor can find a bargain in the iPhone SE. And both of those phones have better headphone audio. Pocketnow's iPhone coverage is brought to you by dbrand. Check out dbrand.com to customize your iPhone with a real-time preview. Dbrand skins are designed to add grip, texture, and kill those jet black iPhone fingerprints. They ship worldwide, and iPhone skins start at under $10. If you're interested, links are in the description below. As always, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to this channel for our full iPhone coverage and help us out with some sharing on your favorite social networks. For Pocketnow, I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, some gadget guy on Twitter and Instagram, and I will catch you all on the next review.